What the is we doing?
All right, ready to go? Awesome. Welcome back, everybody. So today we are starting the conversation with the topic of boundaries. I believe this is episode number 13, if I'm not mistaken. Before we begin, obviously we have our little shots here. I don't know if you want to tell the people the honest truth of what you're drinking, but mine's gin.
Well, mine is actually coffee. I don't know if you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling it. But yeah, I'm being a good kid today.
That's not good, man. That doesn't go with the topic or the podcast,
I mean,
but it's fine.
it's
It's
noon.
fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Anyway, first of all, thank you for everybody who listens to us. You know, we haven't said that aloud lately. But yeah.
I don't think we ever have, but thank you. Cheers.
All right, cool.
All right, so going on the conversation or the topic of boundaries. So, in general, boundaries are very important to have as an individual. And, you know, you'll come across a lot of situations in life, and it just depends on the circumstances, right? Because this could be with like your work, family, relationships. If you don't have clear and set boundaries, what ends up happening is that literally anything goes, right? Like people can disrespect you, people can make you do things you don't want to do, right? Or vice versa, like you're able to do that to them because they don't have boundaries. And then in that sense, you start losing respect for that person. Or in your case, people will start losing respect for you because you don't have any boundaries. You don't have a clear sense of identity. And I think that's one of the reasons to have boundaries as well, is to establish yourself as a person, right, who has a sense of ideals, understands who they are or who they want to become. If you don't set that precedence with clear boundaries, then what you're going to do is tell people that you don't have an identity, and then people will make that for you, and that's a good recipe to start being miserable and depressed. A clear-cut example is not really setting the boundary with your parents who want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, and you not really liking it and not wanting to do it, but because you don't have a ground to stand on, or you don't want to set this precedence of like, hey, this is not what I want to do, you just follow what they want you to do and you'll be miserable. And, you know, it's not uncommon for people in that population of like Asians or Indians, or anywhere or any ethnicity that is that's tailored towards that, to, you know, commit things like suicide or anything that's just harmful, just because you don't really like what you're doing and you don't want to set the precedence of boundaries. So you resort to things like that, drugs, addictions, right? Like these are all things that come about simply because you're not setting the precedence of like, this is who I am and this is what I want. And you telling me something else is just not going to cut it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, let's take a little step back from kind of like what boundaries are. Like, I believe every single person has their own boundaries, even if they don't know it yet. Because there's like everybody has kind of like the limitation to do something or be somewhere. You know, they already know the limitation, and something they just people pleasant, like they just do it. So I think everybody knows. No, everybody has boundaries. It's just a matter of kind of like identifying it and kind of like setting as a priority in their identity. I think that's kind of like from my personal experience, how I set my boundaries clear and there. And I think that's kind of like the one thing that I kind of wanted to mention. So it's a matter of identifying it, setting those, like you mentioned, like in some cultures, people are so afraid of their parents or just society overall of what they will say about me, that they don't want to establish. They already know what they want or what they don't want, but they're just afraid of not setting those clear to, you know, like to their surroundings or to themselves even. So yes, I think boundaries form part of your identity. Like I mentioned, everybody has their boundaries established. I mean, they need to establish their boundaries, because it's crucial for their identity and for who they are. For example, you know me, I like to be late, but that's on purpose. That's one of my boundaries. Like, I don't like to wait for people. Like, that's
Do you
one
rather they wait for you?
like, yes, to be honest, which is not nice to say.
You know, for somebody else, that could be a sign of disrespect, and that's a boundary too, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, and trust me, like, no, all boundaries are gonna kind of like cohere with like everybody, everybody else. Like within
Right.
like friendships or within like a relationship, it's important to kind of like understand and sometimes be tolerant of your partners or your friends'
Mhm.
boundaries, because there will always be kind of like disagreements because everybody's so
Yep.
everybody's gonna have different boundaries, and it's a matter of just compromising and you know, you accept me and even you be late sometimes.
Yeah, no, like again, that's a great way to segue into just understanding that even though you have a boundary set, that doesn't necessarily mean it's like make or break if somebody doesn't like follow it exactly, or you know, you feel slighted or disrespected because you set this precedent or this boundary and somebody didn't acknowledge it. Again, life isn't all black and white, right? Like there's no right and wrong. There's just shadows of gray. And we've discussed this before, and we'll bring it up as a topic of conversation in the future. Again, at the end of the day, it's just kind of living life in such a way where you feel like you're walking in life in such a way where you feel this sense of peace because you are living life in the most truthful way that you possibly can, right? And that's the whole idea of boundaries. It's to live your life as truthfully as you can and the way you want to. Right. And not everybody's going to be on board with that. And that's fine. Not everybody's supposed to like you. And again, that's something else we can talk about, like people needing to like you. That's just a recipe, again, to be depressed, to not enjoy your life, because at the end of the day, we're not supposed to always be in mesh with somebody. Again, the reason why our relationship works so well is because, you know, we have boundaries. We compromise when we need to, and we always have a good time. And at the end of the day, it's always reflecting back on, was this a memorable experience? Did we have a good time? Did we enjoy each other's company? Most of the time, if not all the time, it's a yes. So we continue to be friends, and we, regardless of the boundaries, you know, we'll compromise where we need to. Other times you're going to come across people that just like completely disrespect your boundaries, and they do it time and time again. You might find this in a relationship where, like, you know, you set this clear boundary, like, hey, I don't like you talking to, you know, guys or guy friends, or I don't like when you do this in the house, when I told you that, you know, I like to keep the house orderly, or I like to keep it clean. I would really appreciate it if you do X, Y, and Z. And time again, they don't do it. You know, that's a clear sign that that's somebody that doesn't respect you. And, you know, you're going to have to make a decision there where, do you want to continuously compromise on this precedent that you set, or are you going to walk away?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And again, this is all about your life and living it as truthfully as you can, enjoying it every step of the way. If you're constantly compromising for everything, I promise you, you will be very sad. There's this expression that goes, death by 1,000 concessions, right? So every time you have a boundary, or you set this idea of like the things that you do and don't like, and every single time you always concede, you're just like, all right, fine, we'll compromise here, or yeah, you'll do whatever you want. I'm not going to fight you on this. Again, that's just like, that's a very miserable way of living. And you'll see this in a relationship where the guy just doesn't step, or it's not that he steps on her, but like he doesn't stand his ground when, let's say, the spouse is making fun of him in public, or, you know, is screaming at him for no reason, or whatever the situation might be, right? Like, this is something that, again, this is a recipe for disaster. And if you want to flip the roles, a woman that accepts, you know, abuse, right? Like, there's some men out there that are very violent, and you should have the boundary, like, hey, this is not something that I can tolerate. But if you let it slide every time, then you're just essentially saying that it's okay to disrespect you, and things will continue as they are until something very dramatic happens, right? It's not uncommon for people to suffer domestic abuse to the point where, you know, they might end up dead, or the person gets arrested because it was just so severe. Anyway, like we can go on and on, but it's extremely important to set these precedents of boundaries, whether you understand that you have them or not. And usually it's going to be a feeling, right? Like you have this sensation like, man, I really don't like how this went, or I don't like when you did that. Again, it's not like you have to bottle it up. You can express that in a normal conversation, like, hey, I really didn't like when you did that. You think next time you just don't do that? I would really appreciate that, right? Again, maybe it's a friend making fun of you in public, and you just really did not like the joke, or you didn't like the way things went. Like that's a conversation that you can have with them. And that's setting a clear boundary, being very respectful. You're just not like gonna blow up, right? Like you make fun of me in public and then I all of a sudden get really pissed off and then I flip a table or throw something. Like, no, we're not talking all that. Just like have a clear conversation afterwards. Like, hey, this is not something that I really like. Can you please not do this again? I would really appreciate it. Boom, the boundary has been set. If they do it again and disrespect you again, then again, that's a clear sign of you need to make a decision. Is this somebody that you want in your life or not?
Right. Another thing too, usually when it comes to a relationship, especially whenever somebody tries, they already know your boundary and they try to kind of like break that
Testing.
test. So that's very, very common, like test of your confidence, usually towards a man. And it can also lead into like, the attraction, like it can either increase or decrease the attraction between the partners. And even within like a friends group, let's say somebody like in a social event or something, and you're trying to kind of like just socializing.
Network. Yeah, socialize a network.
And people are gonna try to test your confidence. So usually they're gonna like do that. That's why it's very important not to react. Like even if you understand and you're trying to set the boundary, it's better to stay calm and just like maybe do like a one-to-one. I think somebody told me this, like if things can be done in private, don't do it in public. So it's very important to kind of like always think about that rather than just making a scene, because usually that's when you look like an idiot and somebody who can hold their emotions in place. So yeah, I think boundaries and having just kind of like a sense or knowing exactly who you are and what you want. Well, the who you are is very hard, even for us, because it changes. It's an everlasting learning
But
experience.
what doesn't change is that sense of like, does this feel like, does this feel genuine? Does this feel like it's true to me? Or does this feel like I'm faking it? Does it feel like I'm conceding just to appease other people, right? So like it's a very clear sensation or this emotional feeling that you're like, this is not how this should be going. Oh, hold on. No, it's working there.
Yeah, double shift.
All right. I think I'm back. All right, go for it.
Cool. But yeah, I think like I said, boundaries is crucial to your identity. Like that's the one thing. Identifying them is very important at an early stage, whatever relationship it is, whether it is with your girlfriend or boyfriend or with your parents or with your even with your friends or even with your siblings, having that clear and knowing what can you tolerate and what can you not. It's it's just a matter of self-reflect as well as experiences. Because for me, at the time, a lot of my boundaries I have learned from myself is through experience. What I was able to tolerate and was I not. Like, let's see an example. Like I'm if people who knows me, like they know that I don't really give a shit about a lot of things. And so I was never in that sense that even if I never been bullied like in high school, or maybe I didn't notice that I was getting bullied because I didn't care. Like you can call me shit and I will be like, cool. I don't care. So that was kind of like my boundary. I was like, okay, like usually that kind of reflects on that person who's saying that to me. So I feel bad for that person because it's usually an insecurity that they have. And it's been like that too. Like even with like exes of girls that I have dated, like they come at me to text and shit, like telling me like, like stop talking to whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I will be like, calm down. And then I just blocked. I'd rather not engage because I know like that's kind of like my boundary. Like just let them be. Let them
Yeah, yeah.
talk shit, and that's their own thing, you know. That's their problem. So
Yep.
I think a lot of boundaries that come to you, like it's gonna show up as you experience a lot of things, to be honest. That's a matter. That's kind of like how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like again, like the more you experience life, the more you'll start seeing the things that you do and don't like. And that's how you start setting the boundaries, right? Um, and you don't really know what you don't know. So it's all about the experience of life. And then eventually you start figuring out what it is, again, what you do like and what you don't like. But I guess like just to start wrapping it up, again, boundaries are really important to set an identity for yourself, to start living life the way you actually want to. Again, going back to like the culture that you're raised in and your parents wanting you to do something that you don't want to do. Um, Again, at the end of the day, most people want the best for you. Again, especially within your social circle, within the small community, your family, your friends. And if you truthfully don't like the things that you're doing or you're experiencing, just have a conversation one on one. Just sit down, be genuine. Like, listen, I really don't like this. I don't like the way you're acting. I don't like the way things are going. I don't like the way X, Y, and Z. I just make it clear, like, listen, it's not a matter of like, I'm trying to be negative. I'm trying to go against you. It's just a matter of precedence. Like, my priority is to make sure that I'm living my life the way I want to and not the way you want me to, or live life in such a way where I have to be less so you can be more. Again,
So
that's
let
go
me
ahead.
say right there, because you just mentioned one crucial thing is when like somebody tells you about something. I have seen cases like this where, let's say, a parent tells their son, like their wife is disrespecting him, but this person is not aware of it. Like
Mhm.
I've seen so many cases where, usually it comes like in relationships that one partner is completely disrespecting the other person, and the other person is just doesn't do anything or just
Okay.
is aware of anything. So sometimes
Gotcha.
listening to people, um, like listening to people sometimes is good. Just don't go with that mindset that you have to do what they tell you. But there are times that friends or just your parents or people who wants the best for you, they see from the outside that circle. They have like an outer perspective of how the relationship dynamics are, and maybe you don't see it because you're part of it and you're kind of like comfortable with it. And sometimes it's good or bad. I don't think it's good to kind of like just live my life as I want it to be, as I accept it to be. Sometimes it's really important to get an outside perspective. That's why a lot of couples go to marriage counseling or stuff like that. What are your thoughts
And
about
again, like that goes like hand in hand with like somebody that is in a relationship and they get abused, right? There's always an issue of domestic violence, but like they're so used to it, like they're comfortable with it. It is what it is, and they're not really getting that outside perspective, so they're just like, I guess this is normal. But when you start talking like to other people, other couples, other friends, like, hey, this is not normal. You're in a really toxic, unhealthy relationship. You guys are not good for each other. That'll start opening up your eyes and the perspective of like, hey, maybe this isn't the best thing for me. Especially if like every day I'm getting abused, or I'm always bruised or whatever. So yeah, definitely getting different opinions about your situation will start helping you formulate boundaries, especially if you don't really know or you're not aware. But
it?
that comes more to just like having a good social circle, right? Like having people that are there to support you and have your back, and for a fact that they're not going to try to do anything to, you know,
To hurt you.
negatively affect you or hurt you, or just doing stuff like telling you stuff that's going to positively affect them and negatively impact you. But that'll come over time, right? You will see who's who based off of different circumstances. And again, that goes with just living life. You need to see and you need to experience life with these people and see what they do when situations get tough.
Yeah,
That
thinking
goes back to the conversation of fair weather friends.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that I was thinking on that too. I think it's a matter of kind of just the actions that you have seen this person show day to day, like day after day, time to time actually. And also a bit of your intuition. And maybe that's a good topic to kind of like for the next time, trusting your intuitions. But sometimes our intuitions is telling us, and that kind of goes with the boundaries as well, that our intuitions know what can we tolerate and what we cannot. So usually trusting yourself, trusting your intuitions is the best way to go about it. But definitely listen to outer perspective. If you're unhappy where you are, having this outer perspective can get you kind of like how you said, a report of how other people around you sees you, because
Right.
Sees you, and also like your situations, whatever it is. Like it can also be with friends. Like it doesn't have to be just relationships. There'll be cases that you have toxic friends who just like to party, hang out.
Yep.
Smoke.
Or just friends that like bullying you, right? Or they just like making fun of you, or the only reason why they're friends with you is because they can get something out of you, or they can make you feel less than them, so they like hanging out with you. Again, just bullying you. Like again, this only happens over time. You see different perspectives, and then eventually you'll garner the perspective from your friends and the people around you, like, hey, this is not a healthy thing. And then you can start formulate the boundary, like, hey, this is not something that I like. And then you can start disassociating with the people that you don't feel like are a good match with you.
Absolutely. But yeah, boundaries, very important, very crucial for your identity. We didn't really dive in too much into some of the boundaries that we have. Maybe we can chat about like relationship specific later on. I think that's a good, well, because that's a whole different.
Yeah, that's a whole different.
But anyways, I think that's pretty much it for this episode.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
Until next time.
This is a conversation between friends.
None of what is said here should be taken as legal advice.
We are not experts in any way.
Take what resonates and leave the rest.